Do you ever stop and think that when you get to heaven, there are certain things you want to check out? Example, there's people you want to talk to and ask more about what happened at a particular time. Well, I want to take you to a little story that is in the Gospels, and it's an experience that the disciples had with Christ one particular day. And I think they will all remember it well because it's recorded in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And they give all the details. You kind of have to read all three accounts to really grasp the full story. But I want to take a look at the one that's given to us in the book of Mark. And it starts in verse 35, and it's talking about the disciples when they went on a boat ride with Christ across the lake. And it starts off, on that day, evening had come, and the Lord said to the disciples, let's go across the lake. So they all get in a boat. So it had to be a boat maybe 25, 30 foot long, big enough, maybe even larger, for all the disciples to get into the boat to cross the lake. And it says that a great storm arose. So a great storm arose, and it says the waves were breaking into the boat, and the boat was already filling. Now, as you listen to the story, you find out that Christ is in the stern of the boat, and the Mark account, he gives a little detail, kind of interesting. He's got his head resting on a cushion. Think of that detail. He's in somewhere in the boat, a little bit of shelter possibly in the stern of the boat, but the waves are coming into the boat and they're crashing in, and the boat is filling up, and the disciples are fighting the storm with the rowing and with the bailing and all the sorts of things going on. I don't know if you've ever been in a storm before. I love boating, and I get out in waves many times that I shouldn't be out in. And when those waves start coming over the bow of the boat and start filling the boat and they start washing across the decks, listen, at times it can be scary. And especially if you've got someone in the boat with you that is really not used to this, can be a frightful time. I was in a boat once when actually a fish came on board with those waves. He started flapping on the deck. That really caused excitement. But listen, it can cause hysteria. As far as you can see, there's waves, the wind's blowing, the water's coming up, your visibility's cut down. It can be frightening. And it was for the disciples at this moment. They were afraid. Now imagine, Christ is sleeping in perfect peace on a cushion in the stern of the boat. As you go into the story and you find these sleeping, they go to him and they say, Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? Now the different accounts, different words that they said, but basically they were in panic. They go back and they wake him up, Lord, Lord. They're all fighting the waves. They're trying to bail the boat, and they're having a problem, but they go back and the Lord's sleeping. Lord, Lord, don't you care that we are perishing? And then it says this, he awoke and he rebuked the winds and said to the sea, Peace, be still. And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. A great calm. And he said to them, Why are you so afraid? Now, that's the first question we have to look at in this story. Christ said to them, he sees the hysteria, he sees the water in the boat. He stands up, rebukes, and all of a sudden there's an instant calm. The wind stopped. Notice the sound of wind just roaring in your ears. It stopped. The waves just beating up over the boat. All of a sudden, it's so flat that if you dropped a gum paper in the water, it would leave a ripple. I mean, we are talking calm. Peace be still. When God makes it still, man, it gets still. And it was. And peace be still. And he said, why are you so afraid? Question mark. And I wonder what they thought at that moment. What do you mean, why are we afraid? Then they see the calm. And it says, have you still no faith? Think of that word. Have you still no faith? Listen, shouldn't God say that to you and me today? Reese, why are you still afraid? Why are you worried about these things? Aren't I in the boat with you? Look at me, I'm sleeping. Why are you afraid? Are you still have no faith? Still? Think of that word. After all the things the disciples had seen, all the days they had walked with him, all the miracles he performed, all the times he was in charge of the universe and they could see it clearly through his acts and his signs that he displayed to the world. Are you still afraid? Hasn't God done that for you in your life today? Are you still afraid? After all he's done for you? Listen, we need to look back in our lives and see what God has done. How many times has he calmed the sea? How many times has the roaring wind stopped? How many times he rebuked it for you? He's done it and he will continue to. Are you still afraid? And it goes on to say, and they were filled with great fear. I want to tell you something. Now they were afraid of something different. It wasn't the waves. It wasn't the wind. You know what the fear was? The fear of God. The awesome power that God could stand up and stop the wind, stop the sea. Because it goes on, and they said, they were filled with great fear and said one to another, who then is this? Even the wind and the sea obey him. And I would ask that question to myself and to you today, who is our God? He created the universe out of nothing. He spoke it into existence instantly. He controls everything. He controls the sea. He controls the wind. And he controls the events around you and my life. We can trust him. Why are we still lacking faith? Listen, look around you today. Look at the glory and awesomeness of our God. We can trust Him. He's in control.